Hey guys, Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com here. Please, if you like this video, like and subscribe. This is how we continue to keep going and moving on. We are going to talk about the FCS and Ivy League today. The football betting. I know that a lot of people don't get involved in FCS and Ivy League, and my answer is, look, I get it. I understand why you don't get involved, but I'm here to kind of give you the stats and the trends and the analysis that if you want to, it's an avenue to make money. The sports books around the country, they don't want you betting on this, and this is why they're sometimes added games or they're not added until the morning. Some of them don't even offer it. It's because you can get a grip on this, and I'm going to give you the stats and analysis to move forward and just to keep an eye on some of these FCS and Ivy League games. You have to understand with the Ivy Leagues, it's a completely different game. There's no overtime. It's a running clock. There are different rules. And a lot of the sports books, they're gun shy about allowing you guys to really make some money on that. I spoke years ago to sportsbook directors about getting Ivy League football out there. They said, no, we would never do it. Now, all of a sudden, it's kind of coming into terms. And look, I can confidently say that over the last 15 years, I'm the best Ivy League handicapper in America for basketball and for football. And now we go on to the FCS as well, which you're starting to see a lot more of these online companies, a lot more with the activity of, okay, the competition between the FanDuels and the sports books, all of that. They have to give you FCS. They have to give you that option. So why not now start to learn about it, start to check it out, and we're going to go over some trends today. We're going to start off with my favorite trend of the weekend, and that is with the Southeast Louisiana Lions. Look, you're going, who? Who is the Southeast Louisiana Lions? Well, they're a really good team with a really good offense. They've scored 38 or more points in every game this year, 51 or more in each of the last 3 games. Their offense is absolutely on fire. They actually average 51 points per game over the course of the year, and they just scored 170 points the last 3 weeks. It's a 57-point average. They crush teams, and their offense is rolling. McNeese State, look, they're a decent team, but they've allowed 4 losses in a row here by 31 points. In a win last week, they still allowed 455 yards to, let's be honest, not a very good offense. These two teams met just weeks ago in a weird scheduling in the FCS. 38-35 was the final, so there was a lot of points being scored. But I think it could have been more for the Lions. Southeast Louisiana and their star quarterback, Cole Kelly, he threw for 391 yards, 3 touchdowns, ran for 65 more, and another touchdown, 546 total yards. They actually only scored 38 points. Now remember, I just told you, 51 is their average on the year, and 57 they've been averaging over the last 3 weeks. So I look at Southeast Louisiana, I go, I see 546 yards the last time they played. This is an offense that's rolling. I like the over. I think Southeast Louisiana, they might score 60 in this game, and they should be able to, look, get you the over or close enough to the over by themselves, but they should be able to cover this game as well, depending on what kind of soft line that they're going to give us because of that 38-35 game. All right, let's go over a couple of other news and notes here. Western Illinois has allowed each of the past 8 teams they played to score 31 or more points. They've also allowed an average of 39 points per game. Look, their defense is just bad. Illinois State, they've scored 20 or less in each of the last 4 games and 5 of the last 7 this season. So they can't get their offense going. The Southern Jaguars in their losses, they've allowed 42 points per game in their wins, just 19. This is one of those spots where you have to look at it. A lot of times people look at stats and they look at trends and they go, okay, well, you know what? I see a bad defense here. Yeah, but their defense is bad in their losses. The defense is actually very good in their wins. Maybe a little tough situation to go on. All right, how about Tarleton? Their defense has held 4 straight teams to 21 or less, 6 of the 7 teams this season to 3 touchdowns or less. The defense is pretty good. Sam Houston, they are much better. They held the past 2 opponents to 7 points each, and no one in the past 3 has crossed 20 points. Look, this is a really good defense. Their offense, though, is actually much better. They scored 41 plus in every one of their games except for 1 game. So 41, looks like the mark that they're aiming for, keeping everybody under 20. You know how good they are. Tennessee State, the Tigers, in their 4 wins, they allow 10 points per game. In their 2 losses, 43. We talked about that weird difference, right? Murray State has scored 10 or less in half of their games. Northern Iowa, in their 2 losses, they allowed 34 points each. In their 4 wins, 43 combined points. Southern Illinois, each of the past 3 games, 59 plus totals. Totals, give me a nice total, about 54, 55. I'll be looking at that. Portland State, oh, look, they've allowed 30 points in their 3 wins, and in their 4 losses, 165. 3 went for 40 plus. Another spot where just don't look at, oh, well, if they win here, they lose there. Cal Poly, well, look, Cal Poly's in a bad way. They've lost 6 straight. They have not scored more than 14 in any of them, and they average 9 points per game over their 6-game losing streak. Cal Poly just can't get it done offensively. And Mississippi Valley State, 4 of the last 5 games, they've been close, decided by 6 points or less. And the other game in that span over that 4 of the last 5, but just by 12. So you get a Mississippi Valley State with a little plus money here on a short line, something to take a look at. All right, let's go to one of the better angles of the weekend. In Jackson State, we know how good they are. You've heard about how good they are. Even at an FCS level, they're getting some publicity. Well, they've held every single team to 17 points or less this year. I mean, that's fantastic defense. 7 points allowed in the first half. They've never allowed more than that. In the first half, they've only allowed that 4 times in all their games. 6 passing touchdowns. They've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns total on the season. They scored 131 points in the last 3 weeks. Jackson State's going to have an elevated line. They have a little bit of media behind them, but Jackson State makes a lot of sense to go out there and lay the big wood. Speaking of that, Incarnate Word scored 38 plus in 5 of their 7 games. Houston Baptist allowed 105 points the last 2 weeks. They've allowed 44 or more points in 4 of the last 6 games. They just don't have a defense. The Idaho Vandals, well, they held to 21 or less in all but 1 game against the FCS opponents. They've allowed 140 the last 3 weeks, 105 points the last 2 weeks. Oh, things are all ugly on that defensive side. All right. Here's another good angle. North Dakota State. They are 7-0, so we know how good they are. They've held every team to 20 or less. 5 of the 7 teams didn't score more than 7. Indiana State, meanwhile, in their 4 losses, they didn't score more than a touchdown, and they averaged just 17 points all season. That's going to be a massive spread. Maybe it's worth looking at. Texas Southern have allowed an average of 44 points per game. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they've averaged just 10 points per game over the last 4 games. Missouri State, 5 of the last 7 games have been decided by single digits. Let's go to another decent angle here. Northern Colorado, well, held 17 or less in 7 of their 8 games. They just can't get an offense going. In Sacramento State, well, they're averaging 30 points per game over the last 3 games. It seems like their offense is getting better as the year goes on. Idaho State held to 21 or less in all but 1 game this year. And Davidson, well, their last 3 game totals have reached 63, 105, and 84. Can't wait to find that total and see what they're going to throw down on us. Eastern Illinois has averaged just 13 points per game. Their totals, Eastern Illinois totals in their games have been 28, 45, 28, 42, 155 out there, 27, 46, and 47. You give me a total that's under 47 points here, I'm eating it up with Eastern Illinois. South Dakota State has scored 41 in all or more points in all but 1 game. North Carolina Central, they're averaging just 18 points per game, 16 or less in 3 of the last 4. Norfolk State has scored 42, 45, 47 the last 3 weeks. You think they found their offense? Yeah, I do. Morgan State, they're awful. Look, they're 0-7 on the year. They haven't scored more than 20 points all season long. They average just 10 points per game. Guys, they've scored 72 points all season. This is a defense, by the way, that only allowed 1 team to score more than 31. Here's a decent angle. Delaware State, they averaged 9 points per game. Yeah, I said it, 9. They averaged 9 points per game in their losses, 2 or 3 wins against FCS schools. Maybe they're a little inflated. You got to look at that, padding the schedule against teams that aren't even in the FCS. James Madison, 61, 62, 78. Those are the first 3-week totals that it landed on. Big totals, big offense, you're going over, right? The last 4 weeks, 45, 55, 22, 32. They have found their defense after a little struggle early on. Elon, 2 of the last 3 weeks, the totals have landed on 34 and 27. Albany is 0-7 on the year. We know that. They haven't scored more than 24 in any game. 2 totals out of 8 went to 35 or older. Montana, 5 wins. They didn't allow more than 14 points. Southern Utah, 5 of the 8 losses they have, they've allowed 40-plus points. Lamar, they haven't scored more than 17 points since the first week where they went off for 38. Central Arkansas, totals this year have been 87, 73, 63, 80, 68, 77, and 61. Another school I'm going to be looking at that total really carefully. I almost don't even care who they play. How about LIU? I told you guys about LIU last week. And again, you guys go check it out at Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter. And I add this as one of my things because LIU just exploded last week and blew up all kinds of trends. They scored 32 points total in their first 5 games of the year, And they put up a 30 spot last week. Right? I mean, that was unbelievable. They only passed in that game for 146 yards. So it was all the running game that went for over 200 yards, 207. I think that the LIU that we saw for the first 5 games is way more like the LIU that we're going to get as opposed to what we saw last week. Wagner, on the other hand, 0-7 on the year. They scored 10 points or less on 3 of the last 4 weeks, 4 of the last 7 games overall, and they allowed 31 plus in all but 1 game. Central Connecticut have not scored more than 21 in a game this year. Each of the past 3 weeks, 44 or less. Northwestern State, 21 or less in 6 of the last 7 games. Butler scored 32 in 4 games before last week and 35 last week. This is an LIU situation. I believe that Butler is the team that we saw in the first 4 weeks, not exactly the team that we saw last week. Colgate, they scored 50 points in their 6 losses total. They've allowed 107 the last 3 weeks. This is a Colgate team you keep an eye on here. Bucknell has not scored more than 21 points this season. They kept 4 of 7 teams to under 30. So this is a defensive battle. They want to keep it defensive. That's where they're really rolling. Keep an eye on the Bucknell and the Bucknell defense. New Hampshire hasn't scored more than 27 all year and no more than 21 in the last 5 weeks. Richmond hasn't scored more than 14 in 4 weeks. They've held 5 of 7 teams to 21 or less. Another defensive battle there. North Carolina A&T, 9 points the last 2 weeks. No more than 18 in any of their 4 losses. If they're losing, they are just not getting an offense going at all. Kennesaw State, their defense has held 5 teams to 38 total points. No one has crossed 15 points on the year. 7 points the last 2 weeks is what they've allowed. Their offense has scored 31 plus in 4 of the 5 games. And Gardner-Webb, the last 2 losses, they've allowed over 100 points. Here's another line, going to be massively, I mean, this is going to be minus 30, 35, minus 40, but you might want to lay it. I know the FCS is tough, but this is going to be an interesting line when it comes out. Delaware, they haven't scored more than 20 in the last 6 weeks. Dixie State, they're 0-7 on the year, but 6 of the 7 games they scored 20 or less. Another defensive battle possibly there. Now we're getting into one of my, going into last week, this was by far my favorite trend, okay? So it's one of my favorite trends. Lehigh is 0-7 on the season. They hadn't scored a touchdown the entire year until last week. They actually only had 3 field goals in the previous 6 games combined. They never even hit 2 field goals, right? No more than 3 points in any game, guys. They also were shut out the 2 games leading into last week, and then they put up a 28 spot on Fordham. They ran the ball for 260 yards, and they held the ball for 39 minutes. Hill rushed for 3 touchdowns. I don't know what to make of Lehigh. They couldn't find the end zone, and then they go crazy. I mean, I have to just say it's a product of Fordham here because we have the track record on Lehigh, and they just don't score. I mean, they flat out don't score. Let's look at Holy Cross. Well, they have held each of the last 2 teams to just 14 and 10 points. 4 of 5 teams haven't crossed 17 points. Under spot. And now we're going to end it off here with just a couple of Ivy League notes. Columbia, look, their defense has not allowed more than 24 points this season. Last 4 game totals have been 31, 42, 37, and 19. Dartmouth against Harvard this week should be interesting. Dartmouth, no team has scored more than 21 on them this season. 19, 59, 41, 38, 44, and 46. Those are the totals. Harvard, no team has scored more than 18 on them this season. 34, 33, 34 are the last 3-week totals. So I'm going to be interested to see where they throw this line down. In the FCS, you'll see mistakes happen all the time. You'll see an inflated line. You'll see a number that's just seemingly off. You can take advantage of that, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Check this out every week, and you can go to @TomBartonSports over on Twitter. Please like, subscribe, and we can get this YouTube channel really kicking it off. And make sure you go like me over on Twitter. I don't only do FCS and Ivy League notes. It's news and notes from everything. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.